Okay, we're back on the Investigative Journal. My guest is former New York Police Detective Jim Rothstein, discussing the pedophile problem in our country. And I want to, before I get to Jim, I wanted to mention that you have to come and listen to Wednesday's show, because I do have on Noreen Gosh. We discussed the Johnny Gosh case and how Jim was involved in it. Noreen's going to come on Wednesday to discuss and update this story and tell about how she has been probably one of the few mothers in America that has really tried to stand up to this corruption. And her son now is in his late 30s, and she hasn't seen him since the last visit, and that was interesting because when he was in his, I believe it was maybe 5-6 years ago, maybe I'm wrong, but anyway, he appeared, came to her, and I asked Noreen, I said, why did Johnny not stay? And she said he can't. It was just a visit to kind of let her know that maybe to stop the investigation in a sense. He tried, but really behind this, Jim, didn't it kind of say, and just to digress here 1 minute, didn't that visit by Johnny Gosh kind of tell us all how mind control he was and how he really had no choice to go back, because if he did, he'd probably be killed? Correct?
Not only that, what they're told that their whole families are going to be killed. And it was clearly a message sent by his going to see his mother. And I personally interviewed the man that was brought to Chicago to set the guidelines for his visiting his mother. He was not alone when he went to visit Noreen. So all these people who come up with this stuff that, well, he could have called the cops and that, why would he call the cops for help if they had refused to investigate his disappearance and may in fact have had knowledge of it, as they did when the second boy was kidnapped, the Martin boy? They knew ahead of time that the kidnapping was going to take place, and they did absolutely nothing about it. So why in the world would Johnny Gosh call the cops? I mean, he first of all, he can't be stupid, otherwise he would have never survived to go visit his mother. And that's what people have to understand. And I think it's just a great thing that you have Noreen on, because like I said, she's the only person I know that has stood up and fought for the truth and didn't take any of the stuff that was handed out to make her think differently and brainwash her too. So I think it's great that you're going to have her on the show.
All right, and we'll continue this discussion Wednesday. Let's get to the story we want to talk about this half hour. Frank Sturgis. All right, let's start and go back and lay some groundwork for people and some evidence about how the Kennedy assassination took place, how you found out about it, how it was then covered up. Go ahead.
Well, there's a couple places I could start, but what I'll do is start with the original phone call I got telling me that Frank Sturgis was coming to town, to New York City, to assassinate Marita Lorenz, who had been the lover of Fidel Castro, and she had one son by him. Anyhow, Marita had been there when Frank Sturgis and others planned the Kennedy assassination in Miami, Florida. And after the assassination was planned, there was a shooting, and they got into two cars and drove to Dallas to do the assassination. There were 5 people in those 2 cars. Well, anyhow, Marita was going to testify in the House assassination hearings. And unbeknownst to people at the time, there was a recording made of Sturgis telling her, Marita, you know what the rules are. If you break those rules, you know what the consequences are. Anyhow, that was what was said to Marita, so she was fearing for her life. And on the morning that Sturgis was going to show up, her daughter, Monica, had gone out in the street and got a gun she bought off the street and was, in fact, hiding in the bushes in front of her mother's apartment building. And the police got word that she was there, and they arrested her. So now everybody knew that Marita was going to die. But there was somebody in the intelligence community or in the State Department, wherever it was, we never did find out, because I got the anonymous phone call at the State Select Committee offices telling me that Marita was going to be assassinated if I didn't do something about it. So that started the preparations for verifying what she was saying was true in that, and that night when Sturgis showed up to kill her, my partner Matty Rosenthal and myself arrested Sturgis.
Now, you were in Marita's apartment, correct?
Yes.
And she had documentation of how this assassination went down, and she was going to blow the whistle on these people?
Yes, she was. She was going to testify in the House assassination hearings. And they had told her she better not testify because she was going to tell the truth. In fact, she had all her documents. There was 13, 14 boxes or more of documents stacked on the floor, ready to go. In fact, later on, one of my ex-partners was the guy that drove Marita down with those boxes of evidence and took it right to the assassination hearing room, so we know it was there. But the interesting part of it is Judge Thunheim, who reviewed all these files when I talked to him a couple of years ago, he said there were no files there from Marita Lorenz or Frank Sturgis. And I found that amazing because I know who delivered them. But anyhow, that's how we got to the apartment, and when Frank Sturgis showed up, we arrested him.
Yeah, and we're going to get into the particulars of this and then some of the evidence that shows how they came from Miami to to Dallas and some of the documentation that proves this. But the real point here that has to be emphasized is that Marita was going to there's a couple sides of the game working here. You've got people that want to get to the truth. You've got others in the government trying to cover it up. So knowing this story, there had to be people in the government that were backing Sturgis to come and get rid of Lorenz because they didn't really want her to testify. That's right. Evidenced by the fact that the documentation was transported to the judge, who then lied about what happened to it. So there's a cover-up going on. Somebody was helping Sturgis to get to Lorenz, to kill her before she could blow the whistle on the other people in the government who were perhaps trying to get at the truth, correct? So there's two things going on here, right?
Most definitely, because I got the phone call, and the phone call was anonymous and told me what was going to happen. And that's how we went and met with her and started. And this was early in the morning when we got this call, and he didn't show up till like 9, 10 o'clock at night. So we had all day long to go over to make sure of the information that we were getting. And then what was even
right now, sometimes when we talk about this story, we skip over those hours. What was Marita like? What did she tell you? And what went on before Sturgis actually walked in there and tried to kill her and you arrested him?
Well, the first thing we did, we met her at a restaurant on the east side, and we debriefed her there, so we got to the point where we believed what she was saying. I mean, you got to remember, this sounds kind of far-fetched, and not that it was out of the ordinary, because I had gotten similar calls like this on other things of the a similar nature. So it wasn't surprising to me that I got the call. But as I always was, I was very wary of the information that came this way, so we started questioning her, and she was quite upset. I mean, she knows how the game was played. She was an assassin herself, and she knew how the system works. And then when Monica had been arrested, that was the end of it. Now she knew there was nobody there to protect her because Monica was the daughter of Marcos Jimenez, the dictator from Venezuela, who she helped overthrow and stuff like that. So, these kids and her son Mark, they knew what the world was about at a very young age. I think Monica was 13 at the time. So we had many hours. We had 10, 12 hours to get all this stuff put together, and we did. And we saw the evidence, and we knew exactly what we were doing.
Now let's just talk about who came in those cars, how those cars got to Dallas and what their roles were, because she talked about that, and that was in the evidence she was going to give, right?
Yes,